these truths to be self-evident.
That all men are created equal.
As a member of Congress, I get to have a lot of really interesting people in the office. Experts on what they're talking about.
This is the podcast
for insights into the issues.
China, bioterrorism, Medicare for all. In-depth discussions.
Breaking it down into simple terms. We hold
these truths.
With Dan Crenshaw.
The Eagle has landed.
Welcome to SITREP 17. Situation report, just the news so you can be well informed. We're going to talk about the Ukraine and Russia drone attacks and some peace talks. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court's decisions and the DOJ investigating Biden pardons as well. So let's get started. On Monday, Russian and Ukrainian negotiators met in Istanbul for their second round of direct talks. Moscow came prepared with a set of demands that the Ukrainians have repeatedly rejected. This includes withdrawing from Russian-occupied regions, halting troop mobilizations, cutting off Western arms shipments. Russia also insisted Ukraine hold snap elections, declare neutrality, and give up its NATO ambitions. So these conditions have always been non-starters for Ukraine, which Moscow already knew. But despite making no meaningful progress toward actually ending the war, they did manage to agree on exchanging 6,000 dead and seriously injured wounded soldiers through a newly established commission. These talks unfolded amid escalating drone warfare on both sides. You probably heard about this one. So the day before those talks, on June 1st, Ukraine initiated Operation Spiderweb, a meticulously planned drone offensive that targeted Russian military bases. Several of these air bases were above the Arctic Circle and in the Russian Far East, almost 4,500 miles away from Ukraine. Ukrainian forces smuggled the drones into Russia using trucks carrying containers disguised as prefabricated homes. Once positioned near their targets, the drones were launched from the containers and deployed against nuclear-capable Russian bombers, reportedly crippling 41 out of 100 aircraft. That same evening, Russia retaliated with 472 drones in the biggest drone attack of the war, resulting in civilian casualties and infrastructure damage. I think we can all agree Ukraine's ingenious use of low-cost drones has vast implications, not only for this war, but for modern warfare as we know it. And the country has become a proving ground for emerging tactics and tech, lessons that we cannot afford to ignore, and we are not, by the way. We're learning a lot. In other news, the Supreme Court declines review of weapons bans. So that came as a bit of a surprise. The Supreme Court declined to hear challenges to Maryland's assault weapons ban or Rhode Island's high-capacity magazine ban, thus leaving those restrictions in place. On Monday, the court declined to hear appeals to Maryland's 2013 ban on assault weapons. That was enacted after Sandy Hook, and Rhode Island's 2022 ban on magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. Now, in the Maryland case, a plaintiff argued the term assault weapon is political and designed to exploit public confusion, while the weapons themselves are common and fully protected by the Second Amendment. I agree with that. The Richmond, Virginia-based Fourth Circuit declines the challenge. In the Rhode Island magazine capacity case, 4 gun owners and a registered firearms dealer sued, but the Boston-based First Circuit rejected the claim. Justices Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch dissented from the decision to reject the appeals, and Justice Kavanaugh said that the court would address the AR-15 issue soon. So more to come. In other news, the DOJ is investigating Biden's pardons. So take a quick trip down memory lane. Just days before leaving office, and even within the last 20 minutes of his presidency, Joe Biden issued preemptive pardons to his son, Hunter, the rest of his family, General Mark Milley, Dr. Anthony Fauci, and members of the House January 6th committee. He also commuted the sentences of nearly 2,500 nonviolent drug offenders. At the same time, lawmakers and commentators from both sides of the aisle agree that these final actions by then-President Biden were unprecedented and well beyond the established norms of executive authority. We later learned that these pardons were actually issued using an Autopen. For those who don't know, an Autopen is exactly what it sounds like. It's a device that mechanically replicates a signature and can learn your handwriting even. Now, President Trump's Department of Justice is opening an investigation into these pardons, specifically examining Biden's mental fitness during the last months in office and whether others were taking advantage of him by using the Autopen. That probe will be led by Ed Martin, the Justice Department's pardon attorney. As of now, there's no law prohibiting the use of an Autopen for pardons, but then again, we've never had an aged and ailing president like Joe Biden. Wednesday, former President Biden defended himself in a written response. I quote, "I made the decision about the pardons, executive orders, legislation, and proclamations. Any suggestion that I didn't is ridiculous and false," end quote. In other news, it's worth informing you about how the cartels operate in the oil smuggling business. There was a recent story where a Utah father and son were indicted for smuggling approximately $300 million worth of stolen Mexican crude oil into the United States, allegedly providing material support to the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. That's a designated foreign terrorist organization. Federal agents raided their residence and seized their assets, including oil tankers, vehicles, bank accounts, and luxury properties as part of what they called Operation Liquid Death. So this is just one story that marks a new trend by the cartels. The U.S. Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, or FinCEN, now warned that all smuggling has become a major revenue source for Mexican cartels, generating billions annually and rivaling drug trafficking even in profitability. So they obtain the oil by tapping pipelines or stealing from refineries, and then they use front companies to move the oil across the border, often through Texas and New Mexico. But without the U.S.-based buyers and distributors and financial networks, the cartel's oil operation would collapse, highlighting the central role of American enablers and the fragility of the cartel's revenue stream, and, of course, the necessity of the FBI to be targeting this. You might have seen glimpses of this in that show Landman. Although it's a little bit exaggerated, it's not totally crazy, as we can see from here. President Trump has issued a new travel ban. Yesterday, President Trump announced a suspension on travel to the United States for citizens from 12 countries that either support terrorism, can't control their borders, or treat our visa system like a free-for-all. The countries named in the order are Afghanistan, Myanmar, Chad, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. Say all that fast. If they're currently outside the United States and don't have valid visas, they are subject to the ban. Another 7 countries, Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela will have tighter restrictions moving forward as well. So why these countries, maybe starting with the obvious, Iran, Somalia, actively supporting terrorist groups like Hamas and ISIS. It's maybe not exactly the tourist traffic that we want. Other countries like Congo, Chad, and Equatorial Guinea have visa overstay rates as high as 50%. They're abusing what's historically been a very generous visa system. Who can blame them? Under President Biden, there was no enforcement. For some, like Eritrea, Sudan, Yemen, they don't just have high rates of visa overstay in the United States, they're also lacking the central institutions that our agencies would normally work with to approve visas. If a country doesn't have a competent or cooperative central authority to issue passports, it's just impossible to verify the identity of that national. So if you can't verify that an applicant is who they claim to be, you can't roll out the welcome mat and give them a visa. It's not as controversial as I think many people are trying to make it seem. Left-wing media included, calling it xenophobic. But don't let them fool you. It's just, I think, a very rational restructuring of a system that was often abused and under-enforced. In other headlines, we'll give you a few quick ones. Number one, FBI Director Kash Patel released information on a joint FBI-CBP investigation that found 2 Chinese nationals actually smuggled a dangerous biological pathogen into the U.S. The pathogen is an agro-terrorism agent, and one of the smugglers, a researcher at the University of Michigan, claimed they brought it to the U.S. to study it. Second, number 2, the Supreme Court unanimously ruled that the Mexican government could not sue American gun manufacturers for cartel violence. Mexico had argued that American guns were responsible for cartel violence, but the court held that American manufacturers are not the ones who can be held liable for the misuse of their products. Number 3, on Sunday, and you've certainly heard this story, on Sunday in Boulder, Colorado, a charity event to promote freeing hostages from Hamas was attacked by an illegal immigrant who threw Molotov cocktails at participants. He injured 15 people. A judge blocked the deportation of the suspect's family. That family remains in ICE custody while the suspect awaits trial. Again, our media bias highlight that we're starting now. Again, we want to give you straight news, no spin, but also want to give you examples of the opposite of that. And so this week's dishonor goes to Washington Post. Ran a headline claiming Israeli troops opened fire on a Gaza aid distribution point and killed 30 Palestinians. Turns out their source was none other than Hamas's Gaza Health Ministry. WAPO then quietly changed the headline without any editorial note or correction after it came out that it was a masked gunman, likely someone from Hamas, who opened fire on a crowd of Palestinians at a different aid distribution site. And if you read nothing else, check this out from Breitbart, an op-ed written by myself and Chloe Cole, who is a detransitioner. This was about my amendment to ban taxpayer-funded gender transition surgeries and treatments in the One Big Beautiful Bill. So check it out. That's all for today. Thanks.